This time, I Know Not the Mind Probe, episode number 81, TARDIS and Feathers.
Welcome to No, Not the Mind Probe. I am so scared right now. That's a Blair Witch reference, folks.
I believe that's the second one we've made. And
Maybe it is. Is it time for that to come back? It's got to be. Came out like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a for the kids. It's one of the what is it? What's the reality fake documentary?
Yeah,
mockumentary, but not like The Office. I don't know. It was basically The Office. It's a precursor to The Office. Yeah, a lot of that. Yeah, which is not a podcast, which is what this is. This is a podcast where we watch and rank every single Doctor Who story ever, and there's nothing fake about this. This is This is as real as it gets, people. In fact, we go for the raw emotion. Is really what we go for here. My name is John Grant. I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 38 years. That's incredible.
That's right. And my name's Porter Mason. John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 26 years. And a couple years ago, I finally said yes. Each episode of the podcast, we look at two stories. We're going through the new is, it is new. I mean, the newer of the series in order. And then John acts as our sommelier, our Doctor Who sommelier, and pairs that NuWho story with a classic story. John, what are we watching this episode?
Let's journey into the TARDIS. Let's get inside that TARDIS. Let's look around.
We're gonna have to put your TARDIS up there. Get in there, look under the hood.
Get it up on the lift. You gotta get inside the TARDIS. We only ever see we go in the door. We see the inside a little bit. It's like if I only were ever in your living room or something. We journey into the TARDIS. So, and in fact, that's what's first called Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. Now, if you actually, it's interesting. If you on screen titles, it's center spelled the British way, centre of the TARDIS. But then on the DVD, at least the American version that I have in the menu, it's spelled ER.
No.
Yeah. Scandalous.
Imagine there's a lot of chatter about that.
Oh yeah. The internet blew up over that one. Yeah.
I think that is the main reason why Reddit's like shutting down right now. There's a whole blackout on Reddit. I think it's due to this. Yeah.
Well, I think Q claimed credit for that. It's a lot of stuff that goes on. Yeah, you know how it goes.
The Q drop was just all about the British spelling of center in the title of this episode,
and what it means, and how it means that Hillary Clinton's a pedophile. It's all there, folks. It's all there for you to see. If you just gotta look, sheeple. It's Matt Smith and Clara, and a cast of other random people. You know how things are, how TV shows are, and then we've paired that with another Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. But this one is actually called The Invasion of Time, not Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. So that's slightly different. But it's a Fourth Doctor Leela story returning to Gallifrey. And we explore the hidden reaches of the TARDIS in a thoroughly underwhelming and disappointing way.
All right, well, why don't we get started recapping these? We'll start with Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, story number 236 of the 300 currently available Doctor Who mainline stories. It aired on the 27th of April, 2013. And this is not too long. It's about a year after I got married. I just celebrated my 11th marriage.
Folks, Porter's actually recording this podcast at a romantic table with candles.
She's
and
fine.
Mrs. Probe just across from him.
She's fine. I'm waving at her now. Yeah, she's fine. She's fine.
She's looking ravishing, but so angry. So angry.
As we mentioned, Matt Smith, Clara, and this is a bit of a show in a bottle episode too. Because they're
a giant bottle, but a bottle nonetheless.
Because you said it's a cast of 3 other dudes, and then someone dressed up in a scary Clara uniform. So, and that's pretty much it. We will play a clip that you have prepared for us.
That's the kind of thing I do.
We're outside.
No, we're still in the TARDIS.
There's no way across.
No? Okay. You're right.
So what do we do? Time for a plan. Do you have a plan?
Well, no plan, sorry.
If you don't have a plan, we're dead.
Yes, we are. So just tell me.
Tell you what.
Well, there's no point now. We're about to die. Just tell me who you are.
You know who I am.
No, I don't. I look at you every single day and I don't understand a thing about you. Why do I keep running into you?
Doctor, you invited me. You said...
Before that, I met you at the Dalek Asylum. There was a girl in a shipwreck and she died saving my life, and she was you.
She really wasn't.
Victorian London, there was a governess who was really a barmaid, and we fought the Great Intelligence together. She died and it was my fault, and she was you.
You're scaring me.
What are you, eh? A trick? A trap?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, oh. You really don't, do you?
I think I'm more scared of you right now than anything else on that TARDIS.
You're just Clara, aren't you?
Okay. I don't know what the hell this is about, but the hug is really nice.
All right.
A big moment that's completely wiped out after.
Yeah, I want to return back obviously to that moment. Well, a big moment, but also it was one of those that the music swelling and everything was leading to believe like, oh, I think we just found out something, but I don't really understand what we just found out. Like the doctor seems to have just had a revelation. I don't know exactly what that meant. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the episode. In a way, there's not too much of the plot to get through. You can probably fill in a lot of holes, but basically the TARDIS gets caught by a salvage ship, and they are not on it, or they are on it when this happens. I forget.
They're in the TARDIS.
They are in the TARDIS. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and then
I thought. Yeah. Anyway,
splorped in by the machine.
Right. And you know, he mentions at the beginning this idea of well, like Clara says, let's fix it. And he said there's no big friendly button that can fix everything. So that's the seated. And then at the end of the episode that comes back. So great. They're the salvage ship, the sort of B plot here is the salvage ship is run by these well, a couple of brothers and then another guy who they keep saying is an android.
Right.
And then that becomes this B plot line at the end, which
a really weird B plot line.
Yeah. Sort of its own little Black Mirror type plot line.
Yeah.
That I don't think is threaded well thematically.
No.
And it's just sort of in there. Like
it
just
doesn't make a whole lot of sense somehow.
What happens, I guess we'll just say at the end, we find out that the guy's mortally injured, but is saying like, hey, just cut me in half. It's fine. Like I'm an android. It doesn't matter. Why are you even hesitating? Because then we can move on. And he doesn't even reveal. The doctor then reveals, oh, he never told you, like, they've just been joking around that you're an android. I mean, that's the way they phrase it. And then what we find out is a bit more of it is that they are brothers and some traumatic stuff happened when they were younger. And I, whatever. That was some reasoning behind why they sort of perpetuated this joke, but
But
anyway.
you wouldn't realize you're a robot. There's certain things bodies do. You would think you'd be like,
I mean, I guess
a
it's
very
just like
realistic robot.
A very realistic robot. I think that was the idea. Well, they said android, so that's no, that's anyway.
Yeah.
But like I said, this plotline's just there. It's just kind of there in the background, and you kind of Doctor Who's kind of like, well, what do you think about this? No, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
This to me is we haven't watched it yet. There's going to be one coming up where there's a guy. This is a fourth episode. There's a character who he's convinced that these aliens rescued. He was torn apart in space, basically. That these aliens rescued him and pieced his whole body back together, except for one eye. He's missing his right eye, and he wears an eye patch. And then the big reveal at the end is when he find out that the aliens are actually conning him, and he takes the eye patch off, and his eye is there, and it's just like you wouldn't have noticed that. You didn't know your own eye was under your eye patch.
Yeah. Okay, so then
reveals.
When they're on this salvage ship, and one of the gentlemen who are running the salvage ship is killed by this monster creature. And I don't know about you, first time we watched this, but like pretty early on, just because of the conversations we're having, like, oh yeah, this is Clara somehow. Like, I don't know, it was very obvious. Maybe it's just the build of it or whatever, but like you're just like, yeah, I feel like that's the twists or something that's gonna happen. And that is true. But then it's never really it's not really explained what's going on. So basically what the doctor says is, look, that's you, and then we have a couple scenes where we have some time traveling stuff where we see the doctor and Clara see the other doctor and Clara from, I guess, a different timeline, and he just sort of says like, yeah, this is something that happened in the future that we're trying to prevent. Um and that's it. And then we have this conversation where he's like, okay, you're gonna need to tell me who you are. She genuinely says, I don't know what you're talking about, which is what she said before and
Yeah,
what someone
yeah.
else has said before. But for whatever reason, this when she says it now, he's like, "Oh, that's great!" And then this swelling music happens and moved on. I was like, what happened? Like, what? I don't know what that means.
I think
Other
it's
than he's like, okay, you genuinely are this, like, you're
yeah.
nothing more than this, but it doesn't resolve anything. I mean, I guess he's
No.
just happy that
Well,
that's
I think it's like he's okay. Whatever's going on, you don't know what it is. Like you're not some malicious force, or you're not trying to do something here. So you are entirely innocent. Whatever's happening is something bigger than
well, I
this.
just, and if that's the revelation, that's fine. I feel like he almost could have said that in a way. Instead, he was just like, "Great," like almost as though like I figured it out now. But it's like he hasn't figured it
No,
out.
no, he's
Yeah.
got
Okay.
nowhere other than to
That's
know
what
that
was that
she's yeah.
was confusing to me.
Although, why does
Anyway,
he trust her? Why would he? I guess he just genuinely
he
believes her. I don't
just
think. Yeah, I don't know.
feels like he's a good judge of
Yeah,
character. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
So then
Mm.
we get back and we end up seeing at the beginning she had burned her hand on an object, and then we see at the end like, oh, that thing that she had burned her hand on was something that he had made called Big Friendly Button to kind of
Oh,
tell
right. Yeah.
future and or past self, use this to get out of here. And the time rift is taken care of. I don't know. We can talk more about the plot of this. It relates to the second episode too, so I'll discuss it more in the themes. But this just didn't hang together real well for me. I felt like they were trying to do this thing. I think we've talked about in the past, time travel things that are really heavily involved in time travel and loops and stuff are really tricky. Like they
Yeah.
seem like so fun and like, oh, this would be so fun to explore, but actually it's really tricky to be both clear, like you got to set up the rules, and then you have to be consistent with what you're doing. And this just felt, it seemed like a major thing for them to see themselves and to run into this time loop within a thing, and yet it was just treated as like this is a random other episode where this
Yeah.
happened.
This
And
happens
what is
sometimes.
this other plot line where Clara becomes like a monster, and maybe that'll come back at the end, I don't know. But if this is just like, oh yeah, something in another future thing, you like eat some bad chili and become a huge monster, it's like what it just see he did it wasn't treated as like a big deal. She didn't even react to it. Like
Yeah.
she reacted to it, but not
But she's
like,
like, oh,
oh
all
my
right.
god, like
Yeah,
this
that's
is,
me now. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's a weird one. How did you feel about the scavenger people? There was a little bit of rumble from people that was like, is this a little racist? And I have to say, watching it again, I was like, there's something weird about it. It's like really the
mm,
first time we don't see that many black people in Doctor Who, and here we have a
mm,
black family, and they're treacherous scavengers who run around stealing things from all over the universe. And for some reason,
right.
in I think I was like, I tend not to be too sensitive about these things because as a white person, I know that racism, we solved that when we elected Obama.
Right.
But uh, yeah, this one I was just there was something about watching this, and I didn't really make it up, but there's something about it where it's just like something not quite. It's a little weird here. I don't know why. But it was a little uncomfortable for
It
some.
didn't jump out as me at me as much. Again, I'm a huge racist, so
Mhm.
I probably was just more like, oh, this feels right at home. Feels like a nice warm fire. Um, but I
Porter
also,
only sees color. He
that's
only
right. That's all I
sees
see.
race.
I guess I I guess you're right. In my mind, for some reason, I feel like the newer Who has been better with having
Yeah,
people of
yeah,
color on. So it wasn't like these are the only black people I've seen in years
true.
on the show. So it didn't stick out as much to me.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
I
I
also
mean,
just like didn't like, it was more like I just don't really like this episode. So
yeah,
that's the least of my problems in some ways. Like, yeah.
yeah. I think you got it's written by Stephen Thompson, who did The Curse of the Black Spot. I don't really know much
Oh, didn't
else
like that one
about him.
either.
Yeah,
Huh.
he's a playwright.
Mhm.
Um, I don't really know much.
And
I
I'm
looked
sure
up
he's
his
a
stuff.
very nice man.
I'm sure he's wonderful. Don't know where he is on the Gatus gay meter, but
Ooh.
yeah, who knows? He yeah. This is a response. Actually, it was one of Stephen Moffat sort of pitched this or wanted this story directly in response to the Invasion of Time, which is the only other time we've really explored the TARDIS in great depth. And that time, of course, they had no money; they ran out of budget, and so the TARDIS turns out to be a disused hospital, basically, with a whole bunch of brick corridors and things. So Moffat wanted to finally rectify that. And so you do get some interesting moments of like the huge library and the the outdoor, where they were confined, and sort of trying to be epic in scale, but also just so it's like it veers between these epic rooms like these libraries and then the same old narrow corridors where
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, okay, I guess. um there's some complaint between this one about Clara's character. Is she really being well developed at this point? Again, because you have to hold back her story on some level to keep her a mystery. She does, is she really developing much of a character? I mean, I like her. She's fun to
Yeah.
watch, but if you were like, what's Clara's thing, right? Like Martha, Rose, Donna, all you could probably assign more of a character to them. Clara's like, oh, she's fun and she seems game for anything, and she's a mystery. We don't know much about her. So I think we talked about this last episode.
And like
Yeah,
to me, and the strongest one was that first year or two of Amy, I guess year
yeah,
of Amy, because she was really good, and her the plot of where she was plucked from, because that's where you're always trying to think out. They're on these adventures, and fine, every story isn't going to be about like advancing the plot of that person, but you want to kind of know the general vibe of, hey, they were plucked from their regular life. Where are they, like in their regular life? And you just knew with Amy, like it was literally the day before her wedding
yeah,
day, and you knew her at a character, so you got what she like. She's here doing this while that's happening. That's always an undercurrent to every bit of that first
yeah.
season. And like, yeah, we don't know what's happening with her. Like we know that she was a nanny,
Well, so
but
yeah, she's like living in some random people's house, and
I don't,
she's
yeah, that was confusing to me.
yeah.
Like who
Does she
those,
have a
yeah.
job, or does she just also happen to be living with these people? Is she paid to do this job? Does she have aspirations to be like a plumber or something? Yeah, we don't know how old she is. We don't know anything about her life.
And obviously she seems
Yeah,
adventurous enough to say yes to this, but it didn't seem like she she was like, oh yes, rescue me from this life. She
yeah.
was seemed pretty fine there. But I don't
She
know.
has we've met. She has a family whose fate is unknown. We know. Well, I guess her mother's dead. We don't know anything about her dad. Or yeah, right. She's um uh she's a staggeringly attractive woman, and we don't know if she's dating anyone. Like, so, yeah, we don't know much about her. And the only thing I have to note I did have here is Matt Smith's performance, who I think, we've been talking in the past few episodes about how like we're like, yeah, he's doing okay, yeah, it's just Matt Smith. I was watching this one because I wasn't that interested in the plot, so I was paying attention to him, and I'm like, I think it's just he's so good at this
So
point
good,
that
yeah.
it's like you don't appreciate what he's doing, right?
Yeah,
That
right.
he's such a good performance and playing it so well, and he's funny and quirky, and he just is inhabiting this role. And it's like, oh yeah, he's actually amazing still, but we're
He
just so
is.
used to it that we're just like, yeah, whatever.
It's true. And maybe for that reason, but also probably just him as an actor, I could see him at this point, if not a year before, being like, I think I got to move on from this.
Yeah,
Like I'm
I got
just
this.
sort of I got this. I'm doing it really. I got it. But what am I really doing new? I need to move on to something else. And I guess he will soon. So
Yeah, I mean, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories from his end. So I mean, this is the home stretch. Which maybe also is interesting. It's not about the story's not about him right now. It's very odd. Like it's
yeah.
like, but we're leading up to the 50th anniversary, but it's not. It's about her and her mystery and stuff. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's just this is a fine non-entity of a story.
Yeah, but it's dressed up as something that we feel like will advance. They're doing a time travel plot with Clara and him.
in
It
the TARDIS.
seems
Yeah.
like this should be like this huge revelation about her, and then that moment happens, and that's why I really felt like, did I miss something? But
Yeah.
anyway, all right, we should move on to our classic story, which is the Invasion of Time.
Woo!
This is season 15, story number 6. It is the 97th overall Doctor Who story. We have Louise Jameson as Leela. We have the 4th Doctor. We have K9.
Woohoo!
And some a bunch of other folks. We have some Centarans, a lot of Centarans. And yeah, oh sorry, aired the 4th of February to the 11th of March 1978. I was just born a couple months ago.
Yep.
So I did not tune in.
You wouldn't watch this one?
I didn't
your
watch
mother
this
probably
one.
got you. It was like, I got to get this kid out so I can watch the Invasion of Time.
Yeah, probably. Probably. All right, and here's a clip that John has prepared.
No way I can go out there and live. I've got news for you.
What?
You're stuck here. Your pitiful attempt at revolution has failed.
You're lying.
I'm the living proof I'm not. I don't know what they teach you at the academy these days, but if you can't pull off a simple palace revolution, what can you pull off?
I don't believe you. It's jammed.
Yes. And it's going to stay jammed until the invaders have gone. You see, while I'm in here, they can't touch me. And they can't read my thoughts.
You mean they can travel along any form of broadcast wavelengths?
Yes. And materialize at the end of it. But until they do materialize, I can't identify their planet of origin and time loop it.
But you have access to the greatest source of knowledge in the universe.
Well, I do talk to myself sometimes, yes.
I mean the Matrix.
Oh, that old thing.
That's one of my favorite Tom Baker jokes. You have access to the greatest source of knowledge in the universe. Well, I do talk to myself.
Yeah, that was a good line.
Yeah, he's very
All
witty.
right.
Witty.
Another tight 6 episodes. I mean, actually, this is a different one. This is 6 episodes, 25 minutes each. And it's not that they are just filling time. A lot is happening.
Yes.
Like way too much is happening. So it's not the standard 6 episode slog in a way. There's a great deal of stuff. So I'm going to say a bunch of disconnected things that seem to have happened, and you can fill in things along the way. We're here with Leela and the 4th Doctor, which means we're nearing the end of the 4th Doctor's time too, right?
About midway. I mean, it's the end of Leela's time. So, I mean, we've had Sarah, Leela, then we get the 2 Romanas, and so we're about halfway through.
Right. Okay, never mind. Anyway, we're here with Leela. Yes, and Leela, we'll get to that, but she suddenly leaves at the end with a romantic interest that was not at all apparent to me as I was watching it. And K9 is there.
Rolling around, talking, doing stuff.
So we get to Gallifrey, and the Doctor becomes the president of Gallifrey. That was interesting.
Well, remember the Deadly Assassin, right? So that was, he declared his candidacy for president. Then he was in that, and then and the president, or he declared his candidacy to protect himself from being tried and executed because he couldn't be while he was a candidate. And then the whole plot with the Master, blah blah blah, and then he's like, okay, goodbye everybody, and leaves. And now he's coming back, and he's like, hey, remember when I was running for president? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, did anyone else run? Is anyone else running, or is it? And they're like, no. He's like, well, then I'm president.
I'm the president.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's the.
So he's
West Wing.
Yeah, the Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan is now president move. So then during the kind of inauguration, it looks like the Crown doesn't want him and he's injured. They accuse Leela of attacking him and they try to take her out of the Citadel. Then he gathers all the time. Then the Doctor gathers the Time Lords, and these other aliens show up, the Vardans.
The Vardans, yes.
And what it seems like is that there's this other race, and he's sort of working with them, and it will become a demagogue, and will become a dictator. Like it's like, oh no, how did this fall into? But he's acting so clear, something's up, because it's like this is not at all like the Doctor. Either he's being controlled somehow, which would be surprising because he's never been controlled by anything, or he's acting in this way to lure them for some reason. I don't know. The Chancellor, who I guess is, I don't know, he's some other
Barusa.
leader. Yeah, Barusa.
So remember, he was
He's not the
he's
president.
no, he's he's the second in command. Remember, Barusa was the guy. He was in the Deadly Assassin. This is a direct sequel to Deadly Assassin, but which happened, I think, it's 2 seasons before this, or a season before this. It's 2 seasons before this. And he's Barusa was the guy who was sort of the doctor's old tutor and kind of in charge of everything, and they couldn't get the same actor back, so now it's a new actor.
Right. So, okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So he's sort of like his Obi-Wan, and he has lined the doctor has lined the presidential suite with lead, and you find out later that he brings Barusa in there. He's very cold towards him, and then he brings him in there and tells him this is what's going on. I'm trying to contain this. They're a bad race. Again, getting into racism, they're just a bad race. They're just not good.
I think a lot of us have old preconceived notions about sparkly tinfoil shapes. I mean, when they show up, you're just like, you know what, I'm predisposed not to like you. I'm sorry, my father taught me that, his grandfather taught. It's just, that's what we do. Until we can finally break these barriers.
But he basically tells them, oh yeah, me assuming the presidency and giving all control over to them, it's just a little trick I'm pulling. It's like, it's involved. But he's trying to find out where they are, like where their homeworld is, because it's not known.
Right. He sort of assesses that they're a threat. He thinks that they ultimately will be a threat, and so he figures better just speed it along now, and I can take care of them. We have the advantage rather than wait for them to eventually get to this on their own, I guess. Yeah.
On the meantime, Leela has been banished here, but the whole time she's just like, I'm sure the doctor knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, she's honestly acting the most rationally in a way. She's put there as saying like, how are you? Can't you look at the facts and see this? And she's saying like, well, no, I just have the gut feeling. But like, really, she is acting very rationally, saying, but why would this possibly be how he's acting?
Yeah.
Anyway. And she, I guess, is palling up with Time Lady Rodan. Roden, I'm sorry.
One of the first other, aside from presumably Susan, the first other woman we've now seen in Time Lord society, until we get to Romana. So I mean, we've never seen a woman.
And they called her a Time Lady, which I like, the Lord and Lady. Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay. I don't know. Then so the Vardans, but then we find out that they're just like humans, right?
Yes. Which includes the wonderful meta line of like they show up and they're just like a little short guy on one of the helmets and stuff. And
because prior to that, they're these like glistening, shiny objects. You can't really see them.
They haven't fully manifested or something, but then they do, and they're just like, wait, they're just humans. And the doctor goes, I know, disappointing, isn't it?
Okay, but then the Centaurans show up. Now, have the Centaurans already been introduced, or is this the introduction of them?
No, they had. So we've seen a Time Warrior with the third Doctor, remember? And then there was one other one after that, short one, and so this is their third appearance. This is probably one of the biggest. It's probably one of the more shocking cliffhangers from the original. From really all of them, but definitely the original series. I remember being terrified by this. I remember watching this as a very little kid, and being terrified by the arrival of the Centaurans, because it's playing with a lot of, because it's 4 episodes in, and so again, there's no internet, and so you don't know how many episodes these things were going to be. So most Doctor Who episodes are 4, or stories are 4 episodes. So you're rocking along to the end of the 4, and you're just like, he's like, yay, I beat them, and everybody's like, yay, and then they turn around and like, and that's how I would have directed.
Yeah.
And they. So it's like a huge shock. It's like, oh, all right. So it was a very good cliffhanger.
And are they just there to invade Gallifrey? I mean,
they followed. They sort of followed in the Vardans. So they used that as sort of a distraction, and then they snuck in while they were monkeying around with those little Vardans there, and then.
So then we get into a bit of a kind of a like MacGuffin party of, we need the key of Rassilon. We need there are 3 things, right? The key, the gun,
the rod, and the sash.
Something else.
The rod, the sash, and the key.
Okay, so
symbols of power.
The doctor talks to Barusa and says, I need it. Then he goes through this whole long conversation of like, look, I need this, and okay, well, I don't know if we can. I understand. Let's do it. He gives it to him, and then 2 minutes later, he goes to Leela like, here you go, here's the key. It's like, what are you doing? You can't just give it to her. Anyway, so then they're running around guarding this thing. They eventually put it into this
They're running
gun.
around in the TARDIS. They're running. They're wandering through the depths of the TARDIS.
Yes.
Being chased, and this was we're
Right.
all seeing the TARDIS for the very first time. But again, they had no money, and so it is a disused hospital that they
and then they do
in.
this whole trick too of saying, oh, we're actually caught in this thing, so they go through the same
thing over and over again,
thing over and over again, and becomes part of the plot that is happening.
Yeah.
They construct with
the key,
Rodin and K9 the gun, the
DMAT gun. Yeah, DMAT gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they win. I don't know. Like, so yes. Well, anyway, this is dealt with. We see a couple nice Centauran knife throws.
Right into the probic vent. Yeah.
Yes. And then yes, at the end, because they're dispatched with, and that's solved. But I was more interested by Leela leaving because I felt like I looked down and ate a bit of sandwich, and then I looked up, and they were saying goodbye to Leela. I was like, what are we even talking about? And then she's like, oh, she's found love with Andred. I guess another Time Lord, but that was not. That was completely a surprise to me.
Yes.
And I know you'd mentioned that Tom Baker wasn't the biggest fan of Leela, so
well, no, she was. She wanted to. She.
By the way, we did get some good Leela swimming scenes.
Oh yeah,
which I appreciate.
She's in the pool. Yeah. She's no. She wants to leave. Oh, Louise Jameson was ready to leave. It had been 2 seasons. She was going to do something else. But the producer did not want her to go. They were like, really, can you stay? You're great. We love you. We'd love you to stay. And so kept saying, well, we'll convince her to stay. We'll convince her to stay. And she wanted to die. She wanted to go out sacrificing herself for the Doctor. She thought that would be a very natural end for the character. And so it's not 100% clear if they were like, well, it's not going to happen. Here's the best way out of this situation. But it sounds like basically they did not write the story with her leaving in mind, kind of hoping she'd change her mind. And then once they got to the end of it and they were filming, they're just like, well, she's going. So here she's in love with this guy. And like, I think there's some talk that even that was intentional to kind of tick her off, to be like, well, if you go, you're going to end up in this lame marriage plot. And she's like, well, yeah.
I mean, she stays on Gallifrey. That's fun.
She does. And of course, again, Big Finish being what they are, there's a whole spin-off series. It's just assumed she's still on Gallifrey, of course. And she becomes like this important figure in Gallifrey because she's very different than all of them, which would be an interesting story.
Totally. I like her. And I think she's fun in these episodes, and I think she does provide an interesting contrast to the Gallifreyans. And yeah. Oh, and then last thing, K9 must stay. Oh, she must stay. They're very close.
And you're like, yay, K9's gone.
And then the big reveal is the Doctor's like, yeah, I made another K9. Yeah, I like that. That's like a big reveal. It's like, yeah, it's a robot. You can have more of them. But,
you could have 2 at once. You're leaving out my favorite character, the Castellan, the sort of fawning, toady Castellan, who's sort of always creeping about and like, yes, and switches allegiances every 5 minutes. I think he's great. The great Milton Johns, who's a very well-known character actor from that era, is absolutely brilliant in it. Very plays they go. This is
but it's kind of a mess.
Yes. Well, this is written. This was another story fell through. There was supposed to be a different story, and so the producer.
So they decided to write 4 or 5 stories to put them all in one.
Well, the producer and the script editor got together. This is written by the screen credit is for David Agnew, but it's actually Anthony Reed and Graham Williams writing together. And this was obviously, as you might be able to guess, was hastily done. There are some. They do try to have some big special effects shots. So this is also, again, this is a Doctor Who was suffering a little bit around this time that Star Wars had just come out. So science fiction special effects suddenly took a huge leap, and people were a little less patient with these things. you get a lot of Gallifrey mythology here, as a sequel to the Deadly Assassin and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that one generally regarded as a very good story, and so now you have it paired up with a not so great story. The Gallifrey is very disappointing. The sets are a little disappointing. It's all just kind of, it's. They're desperately trying to finish the season. It's basically what it comes off as, and it turns out to be deeply disappointing. I do think I like Kathleen Kellner, as I mentioned. And I think the guy playing Baruz is very good. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah,
but
he is good.
he's just very dry. And I think Tom Baker has a story about he was talking to him and he's like, oh, what's the secret of your career? He says, well, I've always played long, boring roles. I was like, there's always money in playing a very boring part. Very good. But yes, it's the balance of episodes almost would have been better if you'd had 4 episodes with the Centaurans, because the Vardens are a little dull and it just keeps going around. It's like, all right, if you're going to bring the Centaurans in, and the implication is, it's a full-scale invasion of Gallifrey. So you can imagine now if they did it, there'd be all these special effects scenes of swarms of troops we're going through and all this kind of stuff. But here you just kind of get some people walking down a corridor.
Well, this is okay. So I did watch these in the order of we're talking about them on the episode as God intended. So I watched this together. I watched the new Journey to the Center of the TARDIS and then this first. And my feeling kind of to the end of this was like, I think my hot take is Doctor Who isn't that great at science fiction per se. Meaning Doctor Who is actually not, it's much more than that. There's lots of stuff going on in Doctor Who. It has its own quirky sense and whatever. But both these stories felt like they would have been better served on a show that's just like doing really good science fiction, like a Star Trek type, like high sci-fi or something like that. Maybe it would have pulled both of these stories off. And yes, to the point of the Vardens and the Centaurans, it could have all been cleaned up or whatever.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's like if you think about Invasion of Time, it would be, it's like the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, right? It's a big political thing with wars and armies and going back and forth and stuff like that. And it's just like, they just don't quite have the ability to pull.
And I just think that's not when the show is really humming, when it's basically like, this is just a sci-fi story, and the kind of the quirkiness or whatever actually takes you out of it, and like some things are treated like the rules aren't as clear and stuff like that. Again, all of Doctor Who is in some sense sci-fi, so it's weird to say, but I guess I mean just the sort of high sci-fi, lots of space, or in this case, like lots of time travel. Weirdly, I think of when there's a lot of focus on time travel, it's not always that great in Doctor Who in some cases. Sometimes it's done really well, but like, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. It was like, I could envision either of these episodes on a different show that maybe it would have been handled a little better and a little stronger, but that Doctor Who almost needs it to be a little weirder. There needs to be some extra thing going on here, or else it doesn't really work, because I just felt like neither of these really worked that well.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Maybe it's like it's missing that little quirkiness. You could have done these in some other sci-fi series, which means it isn't Doctor Who, right? Yeah, it needs that little twist of humor, British quirkiness that makes it Who.
Theme.
This is very postmodern.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that is calling themes out from a deep dark hole in the TARDIS. So, but it was more of a soundscape. You're right.
It was more like the Ricola of themes. Ricola.
Not really a theme song, but more a theme soundscape. We are adherents of the repeating themes here in No Not the Mind Probe. We like to talk about topics that repeat and come back and make us think through the themes that are threaded throughout the Doctor Who universe and through time and space itself. John, what did you want to discuss with these set of episodes?
Let's talk about the TARDIS.
The TARDIS.
That's a thing. It's a box. Kind of goes around. So good talk. Good talk.
Bigger on the inside is what I hear.
So I mean, obviously, it's interesting, isn't it, that the mode of transportation becomes a character in so many of these shows,
Right.
right? So you've got the Enterprise, and now you have many Enterprises. But there's always they're on the spaceship, the Enterprise, Voyager, all that key component. Millennium Falcon, in Star Wars, you've got, which is in all 9 at this, or well, no, it's not in the first couple, but it's around. Quite a bit. You've got I'm trying to think of some of the other examples, but I mean the spaceship, the conveyance is a thing. It's a very important thing. And so here you have the TARDIS, which is an interesting one. I was just looking into some stuff ahead of this and sort of like trying to get a sense of the TARDIS. It's actually the worst cheat. So like there's always a complaint. It's like, oh, the sonic screwdriver, it's like a magic wand, right? It can do anything you want when you need it to. It's like, yeah, not like the TARDIS, which can show up anywhere, anytime, any place, dump them out, disappears on its own if it wants to. It has anything inside it. I mean,
no one is ever surprised by its appearance.
Yeah, right. It has infinite space inside of it, which I think is an interesting idea that's probably never played with as much as it could be, because it's sort of like,
right.
It is interesting. Like, why aren't there stories where like the Doctor lands and like an entire army comes out of people, or like cars driving or something like that, right? Like, but it's because it can do anything that they need it to do for the story, right? So it's sort of the biggest cheat in the whole show. But yeah, is it the Enterprise or is it not the Enterprise? And does that matter to anyone?
Interestingly, we were just having I was with a group of friends having a Ship of Theseus discussion about.
No, you weren't.
I was. And the Enterprise came up because the Enterprise is many different ships. There's lots of Enterprises.
There's A through F at the moment, I think.
And
rocketing,
again,
or G even now. I don't know.
Tale of the Ship of Theseus is the ship is slowly replaced over time. All the parts are changed. So is it still the Ship of Theseus because it's completely new material? And what we were talking about as a group of friends is, well, the Enterprise being a great example, or the other one, if you're interested in sports ball, is the Yankees themselves. So let's say the New York Yankees. There was a very like famous version of the Yankees that was in 1927, who was like this one of the best baseball teams ever. There's the 27 Yankees, and then there's the 2023 Yankees. They're different teams, but the New York Yankees still exist through all of them. The Enterprise exists, through all these things. The TARDIS is interesting in that it is, I feel like, a rare case just because of the nature of Doctor Who, where I know the set changes, but isn't it really the same machine over and over again?
Yeah, it's been one thing the whole time. Yeah,
I guess he talks about fixing up when they change the actual interior. He talks about fixing it up.
Yeah, they joked about it's the desktop theme or something like that. But yes, interestingly, and it's very intentional in the or at least certainly in the modern era of Who. But the exterior changes. So it's supposedly right. So it was supposed to have the chameleon circuit. So it was supposed to be able to blend into its surroundings. It got stuck back in the very first episode into this shape of this police box. And so it's like, oh yes, well, I'd love to have it changed, and it would be much better if we could camouflage ourselves and hide, but I can't. But then every once in a while, the exterior changes, like the light at the top sometimes is a blue light, or there's like different, and it's, this is obviously just as the design. Sometimes it's bigger or smaller as the prop changed and stuff over time and stuff like that. And so it's always sort of acknowledged that yes, and now in the new series, it's like, yeah, it changes. The exterior changes slightly all the time too, but never really said, oh, I changed the exterior. It just kind of is different for some reason.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a very it has more of a backstory than most. I guess the Millennium Falcon has a pretty good backstory. The TARDIS has got, it's stolen, and
but he actually, it becomes, especially in the NuWho, it becomes a character, and he talks
literally at one point he's talking to as a woman. But yes, even then it's
right. And we have heard the TARDIS in not this episode, but the previous one, not be a fan of Clara.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought that was
character
going to come into play here. Yeah, I mean, I think it fits with the show. I think it fits. We were just discussing how I was purporting that like I just sometimes don't think it really does true hard sci-fi very well, and that's kind of shows up in the TARDIS. The TARDIS
Yeah.
isn't this big beautiful ship, this, or even the Millennium Falcon is supposed to be this kind of like, oh, junky kind of jalopy type thing,
Right.
but it's also this big
The
cool looking
fastest
ship.
ship in the galaxy. And yes.
This is kind of the whole thing of Doctor Who is like, oh, cool, a sci-fi show, they're going through space, let me see what cool spaceship they're in. It's like, no, it's nothing. It's
It's a
there's so many,
box.
right, it's one of many things about Doctor Who where it's like, yeah, if you like it for that, we don't want you, so don't. If that's why you would like it, then no, you don't get to see that. Are you gonna get to see cool spaceships now and then? Yeah, but that's like not, so I think it fits in that way.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
is it now that's an interesting thing. Do we really get to see cool space? There are spaceships, and they are sort of your classic sci-fi spaceships, but there's no like star destroyers, which are like these sort of awe-inspiring things. It's like, and I don't know, maybe that's just a special effects or how they're done. Like there's very few spaceships in Doctor Who where it's like, oh, remember that really cool one?
Well, I mean, I don't tend to notice that. Well, that's true. I mean, I think they probably just don't focus on it that much. In the
Yeah.
newer show, they do, like, you do see the exteriors of ships. They do take the time to do that.
Yeah.
And but yes, they're not, even when they have done that. And maybe it's just also you and I as fans of it is like, we're not really looking for that. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, there's a Dalek ship. I
Woohoo. Yeah,
took it in enough to understand that it was a Dalek ship,
That's
but
how
I'm
they're
not
getting
like,
from point A to point
ooh,
B. Right.
look
Yeah.
at the lines on that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what? We're not car people. Maybe that's part of the
We're
problem. Like,
not.
maybe if you
We're
were a
not.
car person, the spaceship matters more.
Well,
I don't.
also, speaking as children of slightly lesser means, like, I never had any of the Star Wars ships. They were expensive.
Yeah.
Like, you had to pay more to get the ships. That was harder.
I wanted desperately for years, and if you found my old Christmas list, which of course my mother has filed carefully, at the top of them for years was the Walker. I wanted the AT-AT, the giant
Oh,
Walker.
yeah.
I desperately wanted one of those. My friend Sean Clark, bastard, had one. And I desperately wanted the Walker, but I never got it, and it haunts me to this day.
And so I think in that way you can understand how we feel about the TARDIS. All right. Look, we got out of that section alive, and that's all I can say for it.
It was dicey. It was dicier than it usually is. Let's just put it this way.
We live to record another day. John, there are 300 official Doctor Who television stories. We're hurtling towards an era where that number is going to change, but we're not quite there yet.
We're not there yet. So, folks, live in the now.
And the great thing, as we've discussed, is we are hurtling also down the hill. We're in the back half of not the Mind Probe.
Picking up
We've
speed.
ranked 160 of these shows.
We got that boulder up the hill, and then it's starting to roll down the other side. And now we're chasing it down the hill. We're like, wait, oh.
So anyway, we rank all these. We got 140 to go. We're going to add 2 more today, and I will start. I'll start with Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So both of these are ranked near toward the end of things. Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, I really went pretty far down for a Matt Smith episode, and again, it wasn't terrible. They never are, and Matt Smith, and I've only seen a few of Clara, but she's great. Like, so it's not there's anything bad about them, but I just kind of kept going down, just thinking like, did I enjoy this more than that? I got down below the Ark in Space. Certainly enjoyed that more than this. The Ice Warriors. Asylum of the Daleks is where I stopped because, first of all, I have that ranked next to the 3 Doctors, and I did enjoy this more than the 10th anniversary special, again, because whatever, I did. But also I thought that would be fitting to have this Clara moment with the first time we met Clara Osgood in Asylum of the Daleks, when she was a made-up person.
She wasn't real.
I have her there. So Journey to the Center of TARDIS, I have at number 93 out of 162.
Okay.
Invasion of Time, I went a little lower, and as I was saying with this, this wasn't this wasn't one of those bad episodes where I'm like, God, I'm just frustrated watching this.
Not a total bomb.
But it was confusing and just a lot going on, and none of it really that great. So again, kept going down the list, and I got to the Celestial Toy Maker, and I said, "Oh dear God, what's not worse than that?" And so I stopped there. So I have it at 125 out of 162. It's also right around Resurrection of the Daleks, Time Flight, Doctor Who, The Silurians, Curse of Peladon. It's in that area, and yeah, not the bottom of the bottom, but definitely near the bottom.
Yeah, all right. We're in agreement here on both of these actually. I've got Journey to the Center of the TARDIS at number 92, I think.
Okay.
Right below Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, above Utopia. Which again is when it's only the twist is about the only thing that I liked about Utopia and the Master, but it's a non-entity. I think I've now seen it several times and I still don't really remember it. I was even struggling during this podcast to remember stuff, and I intentionally watched it for this, podcast. It's just kind of it's got the big reveal about Clara, but then that's immediately erased because I think, doesn't she not remember it? I think is something too. Or doesn't remember the conference. So yeah, it's like, okay, so we didn't really make any progress on that. I think the android plot with the brothers is absurd. And the TARDIS special effects are like, it's fine, but you don't just like, okay, anything could be in here and blah. It's just like, okay. So yeah, not particularly exciting to me. And then Invasion of Time is one I wanted to give it more points for nostalgia, because it is, I definitely remember being like 5 years old and watching that cliffhanger, and being scared of it because of Centaur, and excited because the Centaurs are great. But it doesn't hold up particularly well. It is a wonderfully absurd, over the top Tom Baker performance, like just almost literally chewing the scenery. If he could have grabbed bits of scenery and started biting on he would have. And just brilliantly over the top, which always makes for entertaining TV. So yeah, I've got it at 118. So around below the Demons, below A Good Man Goes to War, just above The End of Time, because which is also a sort of bloated mess, convoluted, messy, confusing section that it's a good try, but there's not a ton to redeem it, even though it is a lot of fun, and I probably have rewatched it many times because there's some nostalgia and it's a little fun with Tom Baker.
We're so close on these rankings. I feel like this is the moment where like we should bring the Chinese Prime Minister into the room. We've got an agreement in principle on the rankings.
I just watched Madam Secretary. I'm ready for this. But now it's gonna be, we're gonna find out that we've been doing something wrong with the calculations, and the new number one is Journey to the Center.
Well, I will put these rankings into the supercomputer here, and
calculate
what we find out is Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. So again, one of the closest rankings we have. You ranked at 90, I ranked at 93. It ends up at 96, but in an interesting move, it is in a 4-way tie for 96. I'll tell you what it's tied with: Colony in Space, Face of Evil, and The Romans, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, they feel like a similar.
Also, that means I said I ranked at number 92. That means I should be subtracting one from my rankings, not adding one to my rankings. I apologize.
True.
Folks.
You ranked at 90.
So I did rank at 90. So ignore everything that has been said to this point.
The Invasion of Time.
We'll work that out in ADR. It'll just come back. It's like, and I ranked it number 90.
Invasion of Time ends up, you ranked at 116, I ranked at 125. It ends up at 123, right above Keeper of Traken and right below the Web Planet. That seems fair. Right above Boomtown.
Boomtown.
Battlefield beats it out. I think that's fair too.
Yeah.
Battlefield was one of the ones I thought about where I was like, that wasn't good either, but I don't know, I enjoyed it a little more.
Yeah. Well, it's also 2 episodes shorter. It helps. And the Brigadier was in it. So
that's always helps.
Yeah.
Well, look, you can go to mindprobe.show. I think mindprobe.show/ranking is actually the page where you can see these rankings.
You could just skip the entire introduction and just go straight to the good
that
stuff. Yeah.
You just go to that. And you can
wait, I forgot. Okay.
Oh,
so
yes,
we have to bring in now. On our rankings.
Oh, yes.
Where does Doctor Who magazine?
John is holding up. If you're not watching on YouTube, go on YouTube, because what we're seeing now is John is holding up an actual Doctor Who Will you explain what you're holding
It's
up?
a Doctor Who magazine. It's the latest issue. No, it's the latest issue but one.
And this is a weekly, right?
Yeah.
Just
Daily. It actually
oh,
comes out
daily,
100
yeah.
pages, full color photos, everything. No, this is a monthly Doctor Who magazine, and they are currently going through all the ranking them online, or rating the Doctor Who stories all online. So they've been going through by each Doctor. We're now up to the latest ones are now up to the 5th and 6th Doctor. So we're looking at the Tom Baker years here. We do not have yet the Matt Smith one, so I can't bring that in. But so how did the fans? So again, how this works is you can rank each story up from 1 to 10. If you haven't watched the story, you don't have to rank it at all. You could rank all the stories 10 if you love them all. That'll be a weird.
Very loosey goosey the rules.
So
here.
it's not. This is not a comparative ranking. This is. Just
but then they compile them and make it comparative.
Yes, obviously. Yeah. So the Invasion of Time is 6th from the bottom. Not wildly popular. It's currently number 36 out of 41. And it is down 3 from the 2014 position. So
are other ones that we've watched down there, like is Meglos down there?
Yeah, Meglos is number 39. We've also watched Creature from the Pit is right above Invasion of Time at number 35. Boy, we haven't watched. We still have a lot of Tom Baker.
We have the Smugglers and Edge of Destruction. Are they? And
those are our first Doctor.
Oh, I see. This was the list you were looking at was just the
Bakers. Yeah,
got it. Oh, I see.
So
okay.
The Smugglers is number. That's the first. The Smugglers is number 24 of 29. So also down.
I bet Edge of Destruction. I bet some people like that.
It's gotta be
That's
on
my guess. I don't know.
Somewhere. Yes, it's number 17, about in the middle, about 17 to 29. It's right in the middle of the pack.
And we also. I'm surprised how low we have the Keys of Marinus. Sorry, I'm.
The
first one, but
those are well. It's not. Remember, it's not. It's the first. It's not a great special effects story, and it kind of meanders. Where do they have it on here? It's number 18 of 29.
It's
so
more middle
popular.
of the pack.
Yeah, it's actually come up a couple spots. Wow, it's actually been all. So in 1998, it was 14. Then plummeted to 22. Now it's crawling back up to 18.
This is a new segment that we're going to add to the show called We Read Magazines. Yeah. Well, look, you can go on mindprobe.show. You can't see that. That you can only get by listening to the show and by or watching us on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com, search for No Not the Mind Probe.
Subscribers, yeah.
Our subscribers are shooting through the roof.
We're Rings of Akatan episode. 20 views.
20
people went wild for it.
Wild.
I would say the words mass hysteria are thrown around a lot these days, but I think in this case it's a fair assessment of the response to that one. Yeah.
Sort of like when the Beatles came over on that trip to the US and people airports were mobbed
screaming for Rings of Akatan. And I don't know why. It was one of our better I guess I don't
know. Yeah.
I would actually What's interesting to me is that there are, different numbers for all of them, which suggests that either someone is dipping in and out, like someone's like, okay, well, that one might be good, but that one, I don't know, or that that they're all talking, in their fan clubs about us, and they're like, I really want to hear what Porter's gonna say about the Rings of Akatan. Like it's a Porter that pushes all of Porter's buttons, right? Like that, what is drawing people to certain episodes?
Well, here's what we need to do. We need you. Yes, what I was going to say is what we need you to do is go to YouTube. The link is on the website. You can also go to YouTube, search for No Not the Mind Probe. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us on Spotify. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. But then, what we need to do is reach out. Yeah. Tell us what you like about the episodes. Tell us what you don't. You can reach out at Porter at mindprobe.show or John at mindprobe.show. You can.
We don't check them, but you can
email us. You can check them. I mean, we can check them. If you email us, we'll check our email. That's our promise. Now that's sort of a Schrodinger's cat thing. Like we will check our email if you've sent us some. So it's hard to figure that one out. But we'd really appreciate that, and thank you for the support to date.
You should also I think you should probably also on these things there's a little thumb and it sticks up.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you should click that.
Like him.
I'll bet that would be exciting for everyone. The people at YouTube would probably be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
people are looking at the YouTube, everybody."
First one they've got, yeah. YouTube, because I think YouTube is mainly people just like
Sorry.
upload. There you go. YouTube mainly, I think, is people upload like screen shares from boring business meetings, and that's all that's on there right now. And then no, not the Mind Probe. So I think that people are pretty excited to have this kind of content there.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Ooh, interactive content people would interact with, content people get behind." And that's the motto of No, Not the Mind Probe. Content people get behind.
Speaking of which, what content are we covering on the next episode?
Okay, so the next episode, I'm just gonna confess to a slight error here, which is I thought one of these episodes took place in Scotland. I actually thought both of these episodes took place in Scotland. Turns out only one does. So rather than heading to Scotland, we're going to head north. They're still both north of London. So we're going north of London, maybe crapping out right before we get to Scotland. In the case of our first story, the next in the Matt Smith Clara series, The Crimson Horror, which reunites us with Jenny, Vastra, and Strax. That's right, folks. The Paternoster gang coming in hot at you. And I've paired that with, as I say, not further north, slightly further north. And we can have a hilarious discussion about the differences between the Norths here. The second Doctor, Polly, Ben, and introduction of Jamie in The Highlanders.
Ooh.
Which is all audio, so that one is you gotta listen to that puppy on a old.
I went to old Audible.
Yeah, you gotta wind up your Victrolas, folks, and you gotta put on those little cylinders, and it's gonna be all scratchy, but that's the good stuff.
Well, with that, I will say adieu, John. Happy Pride.
Thank you.
Happy Mark Gatiss month.
Yeah. There's a Mark Gatiss there's a big giant balloon Mark Gatiss going down the street at the parade from Macy's. Right. You know. And hey, this is Probe. Thank you for sitting through that for dinner.
Yeah,
I think that
we almost she's been a real.
You can do that Lady and the Tramp pasta thing now if you want to, guys, or you eat it together. That's really sweet. People love that.
That's how we end all of our lovemaking. Mindprobe.show.